Let's talk about the one thing that separates people who survive financial emergencies from people who spiral into debt: an emergency fund. Now, I know what you're thinking. I've heard about emergency funds 1,000 times. Save 3 to 6 months of expenses. Got it. But here's what nobody actually explains. Why those numbers? What counts as an emergency? And how do you actually build one when you're living paycheck to paycheck? Today, we're going to answer all of that. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how much you need in your emergency fund, and more importantly, how to actually get there. Let's start with the basics. What is an emergency fund? An emergency fund is money you set aside for unexpected expenses that could derail your financial life. It's not for vacations, it's not for Christmas gifts, it's not for a new TV, because yours is getting old. It's for real emergencies. Your car breaks down and you need it to get to work. You lose your job, you have a medical emergency, and hit your insurance deductible. Your apartment floods and you need to replace everything. Your dog eats something toxic and needs emergency surgery. These are things you cannot plan for, cannot avoid, and cannot put off. Without an emergency fund, when these things happen, you've got two choices: credit cards or loans. And that's how people end up in debt spirals that take years to escape. With an emergency fund, when your transmission dies, you're frustrated, but you're not financially destroyed. You write a check, fix the car, and move on with your life. That's the difference. That's why this matters. Now, let's talk about how much you actually need. You've heard the standard advice: 3 to 6 months of expenses. But that's a huge range. 3 months? 6 months? 9 months? How do you know which one applies to you? Here's how to figure it out. First, calculate your monthly expenses. Not your income, your expenses. Rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, car payment, minimum debt payments, gas, phone bill. Everything you must pay every month to keep your life running. Let's say that number is $3,000. 3 months would be $9,000. 6 months would be $18,000. That's a big difference. So, which do you need? Here's the breakdown. If you're single, no kids, working a stable job in a field with lots of opportunities, and you're generally healthy, 3 months is probably fine. You could find another job relatively quickly if you needed to. If you're married with 2 incomes, no kids, both working stable jobs, 3 to 4 months works. You've got backup income if one person loses their job. But if you're the sole income in your household, you've got kids, you work in a volatile industry, or you're self-employed, you need 6 months minimum. Maybe even 9 or 12. Why? Because finding a new job takes longer when you're being selective. When you've got a family depending on you, you can't just take any job. You need time to find the right one. And if you're self-employed or a freelancer, your income already fluctuates. 6 months is the starting point, not the goal. Let me give you some real examples. Meet Marcus. He's 25, single, works as a software developer in a major tech hub. Jobs are everywhere in his field. His monthly expenses are $2,500. Marcus needs about $7,500 in his emergency fund. 3 months. He could land another job pretty quickly if he needed to. Now meet Jennifer. She's 38, married with 2 kids, and she's the primary earner. Her husband works part-time. Her monthly household expenses are $5,000. Jennifer needs $30,000 in her emergency fund. 6 months. She's got more people depending on her, and she needs time to find a job that pays enough to support her family. See the difference? Same rule, completely different numbers based on their situations. But here's where most people get stuck. They hear these numbers and think, there's no way I can save $18,000. I can barely save anything. And I get it. These numbers are intimidating. So let's talk about how to actually build an emergency fund when it feels impossible. First, forget the big number for now. Seriously. If you need $18,000 eventually, but you've got zero right now, that $18,000 is just paralyzing you. Instead, start with a mini emergency fund. Your first goal is $1,000. That's it. $1,000 covers most small emergencies: a car repair, a broken phone, a trip to urgent care. $1,000 is achievable. If you can save $200 a month, you'll hit it in 5 months. If you can only save $100, you'll get there in 10 months. But you'll get there. And here's what happens when you hit that first 1,000. You feel different. You've got a cushion. You're not one flat tire away from panic. That feeling, that's what motivates you to keep going. Once you've got your first 1,000, your next goal is 1 month of expenses. If your expenses are $3,000 a month, you're aiming for $3,000 total in your emergency fund. Then 2 months, then 3. You're building this one layer at a time. Now, where do you actually keep this money? This is important. Your emergency fund needs to be accessible, but not too accessible. Don't keep it in your checking account. It'll disappear. You'll spend it on things that feel important but aren't emergencies. Don't invest it in the stock market. What happens if you lose your job during a recession and the market's down 30%? You just lost a third of your emergency fund right when you need it most. Keep it in a high-yield savings account, somewhere like Ally Bank, Marcus, Discover, or American Express Personal Savings. These accounts pay actual interest, usually around 4 to 5% right now, and you can access the money within a day or two. It's liquid, it's safe, and it's earning something while it sits there. Some people like to keep their emergency fund in a separate bank from their checking account. That extra friction, having to transfer money between banks, makes you think twice before dipping into it. That's a smart move. Now, let's talk about what actually counts as an emergency. This is where people mess up. They build an emergency fund, something comes up, and they think, well, this is kind of an emergency, and they drain it for something that wasn't really an emergency. Here's a simple test. Is this unexpected, necessary, and urgent? Your car breaks down? Unexpected, necessary if you need it for work, urgent because you can't wait. That's an emergency. Your friend's bachelor party in Vegas? Not unexpected, not necessary, not urgent. That's not an emergency. That's a vacation you should have budgeted for. Your laptop dies and you need it for work. Emergency. Your laptop is slow and you want an upgrade, not an emergency. Your dog needs emergency surgery. Emergency. Your dog needs a grooming appointment, not an emergency. You see the pattern. Be strict about this. Your emergency fund is not a slush fund. Here's another thing nobody tells you. You need to refill your emergency fund immediately after you use it. Let's say you've got 6 months saved, your AC dies in the middle of summer, and you spend $3,000 to replace it. Now you're down to about $15,000 instead of $18,000. Your new priority is getting back to $18,000 as fast as possible. Cut back on other spending temporarily, redirect any extra money you get, and rebuild it. Because guess what? Emergencies don't wait for you to be ready. They come whenever they want. Now, what if you've got debt? Should you save for an emergency fund or pay off debt first? This is the million-dollar question, and here's my answer. Both, but emergency fund first. I know that sounds crazy. Credit card debt might be charging you 20% interest. Why wouldn't you throw every dollar at that? Because without an emergency fund, the next time something breaks, you're going right back to the credit cards. You're running on a hamster wheel. So here's what you do. Save your first $1,000, then attack your debt aggressively. Once your debt is gone, build your full emergency fund. That first 1,000 lets you handle small emergencies without adding more debt while you're trying to get out of debt. It breaks the cycle. Let me tell you what an emergency fund really gives you. Options. When you hate your job but you can't quit because you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're trapped. When you've got 6 months of expenses saved, suddenly you have the option to look for something better. You can negotiate. You can take a calculated risk. When your car dies and you need to decide whether to fix it or replace it, and you've got no money saved, you're taking whatever payment plan the dealership offers you. When you've got an emergency fund, you can make the smart financial decision, not the desperate one. An emergency fund isn't just about money. It's about freedom. It's about sleeping at night. It's about not panicking every time your check engine light comes on. So, here's your action plan. Step 1. Calculate your monthly expenses. The real number, not a guess. Step 2. Decide how many months you need based on your situation. Be honest about your job security and responsibilities. Step 3. If you've got nothing saved, your first goal is $1,000. That's your only focus right now. Step 4. Open a high-yield savings account today, not tomorrow, today. And set up an automatic transfer, even if it's just $50 a month. Step 5. Protect this money like your financial life depends on it, because it does. Building an emergency fund is not exciting. It's not going to make you rich. You're not going to brag about it at parties. But it's the foundation of everything else. You cannot build wealth without stability, and you cannot have stability without an emergency fund. In our next video, we're talking about why budgeting apps fail for most people and what actually works better. Because tracking your spending is important, but most people are doing it wrong. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.